Welcome to a special episode of BNS Spot Movies. Each October, Unsung Horrors podcast does a whole month seeing movies. This year, they're again setting up a fundraiser for Best Friends, which is working to save the lives of dogs and cats all across America to give pets second chances and happy homes. This is very important to me. Basically, for every horror movie you watch, you donate $1 or more in October. There's been prompts all month long that were shared with the hashtag #4YearsBack, and I've been part of this for a couple of years. Really excited to do it, and I'm going to share a bunch of the movies that I watch and a few other folks watch too. You'll have not just my voice doing these, I'll have a couple other voices, as well as some info about the people that posted these. It's going to be a little bit longer episode. It might be a 2-part episode. Let's see how I feel. I'm recording it in the middle of the night. I'm not going to do as much editing as I usually do on this. Probably not as many sound effects. So just understand. Anyway, the first one is Spider Baby. And the theme for that day was Lon Chaney Jr. Sr. Adam Hursey wrote this one. Adam's a pharmacist, specializes in health informatics by day. His true passion, cinema. His current favorite films are Back to the Future, Stop Making Sense, and Enemy for Love. He's written articles for Film East and Physical Media Advocate. Primarily examines older films through the lens of contemporary perspectives. He's usually found on Letterboxd. He rates by horror and exploitation films. I'll share out his info in the show notes, but you can follow him on Letterboxd or Instagram at ASHURSEY. A Hershey. He's adding. Hopefully I said that right. Anyway, the horror landscape in the mid-late 60s is a bit fractured in a sort of limbo. Almost waiting for subgenre to emerge. Hammer and stranglehold of gothic tales of horror. Herschel Gordon Lewis is the inventing splatter film. Jose Mojica Marins brought his boogeyman creation of Coffin Joe in Brazil. Bob had planted the initial season of Jolly with Blood and Black Lace, waiting for Dario Argento to come in and reap the benefits 2 years later. In mainstream America, everything had changed. 68 with 2 movies, Rosemary's Baby and Night of the Living Dead. And before these landmark films changed everything, most horror films were pulling from the past rather than pushing the genre forward. Spider Baby is an interesting representation of where horror started in 1967. Spider Baby was written, edited, and directed by Jack Hill. Out of the Roger Corman School of Filmmakers, Hill will go to direct some of the most famous exploitation films of the 70s, including Coffee, Foxy Brown, and Switchblade Sisters. Prior to Spider Baby, Hill, along with the personal favorite director of the writer, Stephanie Rothman, directed the treble production Bloodbath, various of some covered on the Unsung Horrors podcast. For Spider Baby, Hill seemingly pulled what was popular in horror films at the time. That old dark gothic house with the family was not quite right. Cast an actor, in this case Lon Chaney Jr., might need some sort of comeback vehicle, similar to what Robert Aldrich did and what happened to Baby Jane and Hush Hush Charlotte, afflicting the family with a fictional genetic condition called Mary syndrome, in which the unfortunately inflicted begin to mentally regress after puberty. Spider Baby is infused with colorful characters where anything can happen. The children act in feral ways, particularly Virginia, who captures victims in a makeshift spiderweb before biting them with a pair of knives. Bruno, played by Chaney Jr., is taking charge of the siblings as his wards, trying his best to protect them from themselves, perhaps society from them. Everything changes, though, with some desperate, distant relatives show up, hoping to claim the stake in family's inheritance. While the film may resemble a typical gothic nightmare with spiderweb skeletons and subterranean pits in the basement abound, it also offers aspects not seen in a lot of horror movies at that time. There's definitely more of a comedic tone to the whole story. There is also a character breaks the fourth wall to directly address the audience at the beginning and end of the story. Perhaps most striking is a meta moment where a character at the dinner table references the Wolfman, Chaney Jr.'s comic role. I'm not sure if Spider Baby is going to be the most memorable film I watch this month, but it's a solid start for sure. And I watched this on the Arrow Player, but it's streaming just about everywhere. Up next is my pick for the first day, for Lon Chaney Jr. Day, and it is The Mummy's Ghost from 1944. And if you know me, you know I love a mummy movie. I love Lon Chaney Jr.'s Karis the Mummy, but Chaney went through a lot to be in this role. Telling Frederick C. Hoffman that he sweated, he couldn't wick it away. I itch and I can't sweat. He took his anger out by choking actor Frank Riker out, according to the director, Reginald Van Buren. Oh my gosh. Well, you don't want to make Chaney upset. So I wouldn't. I love him. Andoheb, a high priest of Arkham, has summoned Yosef Bey. Look, I love this movie already. It's John Carradine. To the Temple of Arkham to pass on his duties. Meanwhile, Professor Matthew Norman, Frank Riker, who Choki, trying to convince the students that Mummy Karis is the real thing. One of his students, Tom Hervey, played by Robert Lowry, the second actor that ever played Batman, barely listens. After all, He has a hot Egyptian girlfriend, Amina Mansouri, played by Ramsey Ames, who's actually Spanish. She got the role when Venezuela volcano Aquila fell during a dizzy spell, landed headfirst on rocks being white. She's a fake and she aimed for the rocks. But when anyone even mentions Egypt, Amina starts to feel uneasy. USF base starts brewing, goes 9 tea leaves, Karis returns, the professor gets choked in movie, but also for real. And Amina somehow has a new birthmark after seeing a mummy. Karis starts leaving mold all over his victims. It's a mess. The body of, I think, falls into dust. She's reincarnated into Amina. I probably already figured that. I mean, all the mummy movies are about, they're like, can we borrow this little bit from Dracula and have reincarnated love? Anyway, the real problem comes up when Bay decides, and he's right, that the girl's so gorgeous, he has to have her for himself. Karis reacts as any of us would by shoving him out a window, barely avoiding him, only to sink back into the swamp as he and his bride, aged 2 times Tom, was about to elope with his girlfriend. When you see Karis hang up in the museum, that's what it is. They didn't put up the necessary items into the set at time, and Chaney cut himself. That blood is all real. Hardway blood is in sand wrestling. Hays Code be damned. The female heroine doesn't survive. And you can see her nipples in one scene. Look, I'm sorry. I don't know any other non-sexist way of saying it. As I mentioned earlier, I love all my movies. At least the Universal ones tied in together. Well, I hated this rap so much. And Bill Flex horror scenes. He said, according to Christopher Luck, makeup master Charles B. Pierce's current biographer, the mummy's makeup is a rubber mask. Before the mask is applied, Chaney's wrapped by John Bonham Pierce with severe publicity because it's 400 yards of gauze. Pierce then takes Chaney out in the couch with the sunshine if possible and applies dark paint to the wrappings in order to suggest the scorching feature with their previous films. It's fun. Pierce then wraps up Chaney's hands so as to get the illusion that the mummy's fingers have been burned off, and then he puts his arm in the sling. Finally, the mask which blocks out Chaney's eye with a new one is glued to his face with Fuller's mud. And this is also breathed through his hair, and then Pierce puts a spear come. Look at the latex, spear tissue, all sorts of stuff to make a more realistic look, as realistic as a mummy could be. And grease paint powder added is by far, as I said, Chaney's least favorite makeup. Good news is that his dog Moose got to set Moose, Bela Lugosi, in a werewolf form. Wolfman, it became Chaney's beloved pet. The weird thing about this movie is its female character just gets abused. She did not ask. We don't ask for anything in life, right? We're just given whatever. But she did not ask to be the reincarnated lover, whatever, how this works. Anyway, Adam's next movie is Mirror, Mirror 2, Raven Dance. We're going to turn to the ghost of Carolyn D. Fonseca for this one.
Hello all. Ghost of Carolyn D. Fonseca here. Adam, thank you for writing this, and I hope you enjoy my dramatic reading. I waited an entire year with great anticipation for this movie. I watched the original Mirror Mirror for my Karen Black pick in last year's Horror Gives Back challenge. It was unexpectedly one of my favorite films from that month. Karen Black's presence definitely helped, but it was more than just her. I was invested in the characters. I really enjoyed the performance from Rainbow Harvest, just the best name ever, as she channeled Winona Ryder's goth stylings of Lydia Dietz from Beetlejuice. Perhaps what intrigued me the most was to find out how many women were involved in the production. Directed by a woman, Marina Sargenti, and mainly written by women, including sisters Annette and Gina Casconi. The film feels different and refreshing compared to most horror movies released in the early 1990s. I was excited to watch the sequel, Mirror, Mirror 2, Raven Dance. So much so that I saved it for this challenge, expecting to be able to plug it into the sequels category, which is typically an option. I wouldn't say that I made a terrible mistake, but boy howdy was I let down. I guess I only have myself to blame. How could I possibly have had such high expectations for this film? I blame the poster. If you watched Mirror, Mirror, you may as well forget everything you saw. Raven Dance is basically a sequel in name only. You could easily go straight to this film without having seen the original. Don't do it, though. The only returning element is the mirror itself. Although, is it the same mirror? How would it have gotten to a church orphanage? And there is a 17-year time jump in this film as well. Maybe someone manufactured a bunch of mirrors, and the demonic force can travel among them. Again, no answers. And really, why am I even questioning it? I cannot put more thought into the lore than the writers, right? In the cold open of this film, a nun is blinded by the power of the mirror. 17 years later, Heather from Mr. Belvedere, Tracy Wells, her actual character name here is Marley, and her younger brother show up at the orphanage after the death of their parents. For, again, some unknown reason, a rock band is setting up to play at a charity event, I guess. They make fun of the fiddle-playing little brother, and Marley makes a random wish that the mirror grants, frying the band members, but blinding her in the process. Things only get weirder from here, as Sally Kellerman shows up as Marley's stepsister, Roslyn. Having been cut out of the will, Roslyn hatches a plan with Dr. Lasky, Roddy McDowell, to incapacitate Marley and steal the inheritance. But a mysterious man named Christian, Mark Ruffalo of all people in his film debut, is there to help Marley get her groove back. Maybe. Unless he is evil. It doesn't really matter. Throw in some extended ballet dance sequences and shots of a raven now and then, and you have all the ingredients for a mid-90s direct-to-video sequel to a film that was pretty obscure in the first place. It's not great, although I will say that the twist ending was perhaps the most interesting aspect of the film. It didn't quite save it, but it did bump the whole experience up by half a star. Will I be watching Mirror Mirror 3, The Voyeur, next year? 100% I will. I'm always committed to a bit. Plus, Mark Ruffalo is in this one too, but as a totally different character. Sign me up.
That was Adam's read for sequel, and mine is, I went back to the Universal well, Son of Dracula from 1943, the third in Universal series, and the first in 7 years since Dracula's daughter. This time, Lon Chaney Jr. takes over the role of Dracula, or as he's called in this segment, Count Alucard. Has anyone ever been fooled by Count Alucard? It was initially written by Kurt Siodmak, who was asked to lead by his brother Robert when he was chosen as the director. Robert said the two had a sibling rivalry while we were in Germany. Robert had a magazine, and when I wrote for it, I had to change my name. He only wanted one person with the last name around. This lasted 71 years until he died. Eric Taylor took over as the writer. Count Alucard is invited to New Orleans just in time for wealthy Colonel Caldwell to die and leave his money to his daughter Claire, Evelyn Anchors, and his estate Dark Oaks to his daughter Catherine and Louise Albritton, who soon marries Alucard. This upsets her fiancé Frank Stanley. I mean, it would upset any fiancé if a person got married, who shoots Alucard and the bullets go right through him, killing Catherine. Or maybe not, because now she only shows up at night, claiming that she and her husband conduct experiments throughout the day. When the cops investigate, Frank has turned himself in. They find her dead body. As you can guess, she's one of the brides of Dracula. Professor Laszlo, J. Edward Bromberg, arrives and does the common sense thing of telling everyone, Alucard backwards is Dracula. Shock. Catherine still loves Frank, and she turns him into a vampire. We're also telling him how to kill Alucard. It's like a Dracula noir. Frank, however, doesn't want to be a vampire, so he does what any of us would. He sets his ex-fiancée on fire. Who is the son of Dracula? I guess Alucard. While this was filming, Albritton and co-star Paige were constantly putting jokes on the cast. One day, Pat Moriarty, who played the sheriff, and Paige were filming a scene in which they opened Catherine's coffin. Imagine their shock to find Albritton inside, completely nude. Son of Dracula. Up next, another from Adam, Fatal Images, and this is the Bleeding Skull Day. You know you're in the right place when a movie has a throwaway line like, I gotta start buying a better cut Coke. I love that the alternate title of this movie is Allison's Revenge, and there is absolutely no character named Allison in this movie. A better alternative title would have been I Was Prom Queen Too. Seems as if everyone was the prom queen in high school except for our protagonist, Amy Lane Coyle. She's a photographer. She finds herself shooting high school cheerleaders, prom queens, and swimsuit models. With her alleged artistic flair, she has higher ambitions. When she comes across an interesting camera angle and a camera in a random pawn shop, retail therapy time to soothe her current career path. Little does she know that the camera contains the spirit of a serial killer. Now, with every click of the shutter, her subjects become victims, with the photos projecting how they will die. Kind of like David Warner's photos in The Omen. It took a while to accept the treasures that shot on video films have to offer, But once I brought in, I went all in. It does not take much for me to find value in these films, likable characters, at least interesting characters, an unhinged plot. Doing a lot with a little is all I can ask for. Who cares if it looks like it was filmed inside someone's heavily carpeted house in the 80s with no budget for decent lighting? Does it matter if these actors have no experience and may never be seen again? It does not. I'm always amazed that people can make a movie for $10,000, and here I am about 35 years later, wishing I had the gumption to try to create something people might be discovering for the first time decades from now. Bleeding Skull ranked Fatal Images at number 46 on their list of best shot on video films feels okay to me. Now we just need one of those boutique labels to give this one a nice release so more people can be exposed to the lights of sassy models, roommates who wear their pajamas under their street clothes to save time, and supernatural cameras that never run out of film. The next film on our list is The Soul Tangler from 1987. Oh no, Soul Tangler. Soul Tangler's article is written by Parker Simpson. Parker, thanks for doing this. They currently co-host the Where Is My Mind podcast. They are a writer and podcaster focusing on cult films and their social impacts. Where's My Mind's a podcast focusing on underappreciated films from a variety of genres and countries. They've also held panels, charted local organizations, and written articles to their blog. When not writing or studying, they like to spend time with their pets and go outside. I'll share the link tree and blog in the show notes. Homemade horror films are a huge hit or miss of mine. Oftentimes I get frustrated with the boring visuals, the film and videos, E-grade acting, and disjointed pacing. And sometimes, remember, I couldn't make anything half as charming, so I shut up and take some sleeping pills to further destroy the experience. This is no different with The Soul Tangler, a late 80s riff on the re-emerging mad scientist genre. In it, Dr. Lepesky invents a drug that allows the souls of users to transplant into corpses. Naturally, this comes with some very severe side effects from mild hallucinations. Gosh, maybe am I on drugs? To downright madness. If you're like me, you can see this is slightly derivative of a well-known cult classic. The Soul Tangler initially seems like a ripoff of Stuart Gordon's classic Reanimator, taking a doctor's fascination with life and death to the extremes, while characters around him are extremely concerned about what he's doing. In the latter, you see a clean-cut, no-nonsense Jeffrey Combs slowly manipulating everyone around him as he weasels his way out of every situation. Here we see a grease-ridden, basement-dwelling, hubris-ridden maniac who seems to be sadistically more attached to women, yet hates them more than his counterpart. You can be able to see who I like more based on the wording. That being said, I would argue that watching Dr. Lipinski ramble about his work is a strong point of the film, and that he's dissimilar enough to disqualify his character as a mere clone of the indomitable Herbert West. The film's main flaw is the pacing. Most SOV 16mm horror films of this era slip into time distortion where 15 minutes feels like an hour or more. The Soul Tangler is no different. This thing drags from the 5-minute mark until the final 15 as it's challenging watching the small screen with no one around to comment on the small yet quirky aspects of everyday life that permeates all folks in its ilk. Additionally, the majority of the camera work and acting are all stiff as a rod. The saving grace is that undercuts these criticisms is the weirdness that suddenly pops up at any given moment. Completely unsynced audio that makes me restart a scene, killer original music, believable investigative reporting. Come on, you can't help but love it. The cherry on top is the goopy gore scattered throughout the film. The finale in particular is a lot of fun. I didn't hate this. I really wanted to love it even. If anything, it proved to me that these sorts of films are an acquired taste. So maybe something I don't have at this moment. That's okay. Doesn't take away from the fact that Pat Bichot made a relatively entertaining film with an extremely low budget, and that on its own is remarkable. Thanks to the folks at Bleeding Skull for dropping myself and many others aligned to this, as well as many other unknown gems. My unsung horror pick, see, no edits. We're going in live. My pick for the Bleeding Skull one is Invocation Satanica from 1989. The VHS cover for this rips off Ranarox, which was always in heavy metal. This is a Mexican SOV horror film that was an extended sequence of a woman's locker room and billiards, punctuated by sinister killers, scored to old Slayer tracks, the best Slayer. Slayer over Mexican SOV horror is even better, throwing a Ouija board in there. Even if this is boring for long stretches, but I'm patient. Jorge Noble also made El Virus del Poder, Massacre en Matamoros, La Secta Satanica, Cartel de la Droga, El Rojo de la Muerte, and Asesino de Medianoche, Mexican movies that you can't tell if they're slashers, Narco or Giallo movies from the covers, but sure can't tell the Luis Aguilar is in them. Noble's often his own films, and he's in this. He's Ibar, the killer. Ivan is better than Ibar? I don't know. Here's what I do know. If you find a spirit board, don't use it. Nothing good can outweigh the killer coming back from the dead that can make up for the spirit board. This combines public domain classical organ music with a Slayer cover of Hell Awaits played over and over again. The Strays mix them all there for it. Rebecca Silva is in this. She bears a resemblance to Lena Romay, which I love. And she plays Sylvia, the one who brings Ivan back. He's the same guy who killed her mother and raped her sister for her dead, bashed his brains in with a bottle of beer, which is fitting, as he's the only movie killer I've ever seen that wears a straw Corona hat. I wanted more blood in Satan, and well, got not a lot. I did get a fog that can eat away the clothing of me about teens, and I'm okay with that. And Trash Mix, as always, did a much better review of this, but I dug it. I have a weakness for Ouija movies. I think we've all talked about that, but holy cow. Speaking of weaknesses, up next, Faceless. And Faceless is the Lena Remay. Say Lena Remay's name, and she shows up. Adam wrote this one. He said, and I disagree. I think Adam talks down on his work a bit. He says he doesn't have the expertise to write anything about a Just Franco film, but it's not going to stop him. Faceless is only the 6th Franco movie he's watched. The other ones may not be the ones that spring to mind. Venus and Furs and Bloody Moon are popular. His favorite film has been The Other Side of the Mirror, and then he watched Night of the Skull and Bahi Blanca. But he doesn't have a great handle, he feels, on Franco's filmography. He has seen Eyes Without a Face, not the only person. Apparently, Faceless owes a great deal to that classic tale of a doctor trying to successfully graft another person's face onto the face of his daughter. Never really tried to make a ranking of my favorite horror films of all time, but if I did, it would be high on the list. Apparently, Just Franco uses this motif a good bit in his films about Dr. Orloff, always played by Howard Vernon. And again, I'm at a disadvantage because I just have not watched these films, but I really want to, and after watching Faceless, I feel a great need to prioritize these Franco films. Adam, yes. In Faceless, we are treated to Helmut Berger as a plastic surgeon who has made an enemy, a former patient who blames him for a botched procedure. When this patient tries to throw acid on his face, he ducks, and unfortunately his sister receives the burn. So one doesn't, one has to. Get his assistant, Bridget Lahey, and an actress that emphasizes his films. He should also prioritize, yes, my friend, to start kidnapping models and to collect the infamous Dr. Orloff to perform face transplants. Unfortunately for them, one of the models they kidnap is the daughter of Telly Savalas, criminally underused here, who hires Christopher Mitchum, of all people, to go to Paris, and find his daughter. Faceless is pretty much everything Adam looks for in a horror movie this time of year. Stellar cast, an interesting enough plot to keep my interest, some over-the-top gore. Really can't ask for a lot more. The selection feels like a bit of a cheat, since it was supposed to highlight Spanish actress Lena Remay, a longtime collaborator, and eventually the wife of Just Franco. In Faceless, she's only in a cameo as Orloff's wife. Plenty of other films to choose from. If nothing else, this day has been a good reminder that I really should focus on more Just Franco in the new year. Yes. Maybe I'll make a goal to have Franco be my most watched director of 2026. He has been my most watched director of the last 2 years. So let's go with my pick, Apocalypse Sexual from 1982. According to Letterboxd, Lena Remay is the most watched actor in my history, having appeared in more than 100 movies. She's trailed only by Christopher Lee, John Carradine, and Dick Miller. Carl Mancini's gaining, but Carl Mancini isn't in all the movies that they say she's in. And to Lance and Erica, another Carl Mancini category next year, please. Let's not forget how many movies Carl Mancini is not in, or is in. Anyway, this is directed by Carlos Arad, who also did The Mummy's Revenge and House of Psychotic Women, and Sergio Bergonzelli, who did Blood Delirium. Maybe or maybe not, who could say? And written by Arad, this has a gang that is pulling off crimes or having sex with one another. And then they decide to kidnap a millionaire's daughter, Petty Hearst style. The gang is Lisa Ajita Wilson, American-born transgender actress, also in Macumba Sexual and Sodomania, amongst other films. Ruth, who's Lena Remay, Tanya, Hemi Basalo, also known as Eva Palmer. She's also in Franco's Night of Open Sex. Antonio, Jose Ferro, who's in Macumba Sexual. And Clark, Ricardo Diaz, who is in Cutthroat's 9. He's there later. The virginal girl Muriel is played by Katy Bellari, who is only in one other film, La Vendedora de Ropa, and she may be more perverted than all of them. Speaking of crime, 2 versions were released and R-rated, and an uncensored hardcore version with explicit sex scenes. At one point, the hardcore version was not legal in Spain where it was made, so it was distributed in countries where it was allowed. Some of the actors who were in the hardcore scene signed contracts assuring them that the version would never make it to Spain, where it may harm their career. Obviously, Lena Remay did not care. Arad claimed that he filmed the sex scenes with the help of a professional hardcore actor, as not many men could stay, when the cameras rolled after the laws liberalized. There's an explosion of Classifica S films, which the softcore versions released at. Italians and my people, they got the hardcore. Strange somewhat that Arad, who did 4 movies with Paul Naschy, suddenly is making adult films. The Italian version has a more ironic tone to the voiceover, while the Spanish one claims this is a true story and tries to tie it into Charles Manson. Also, Square Brill in the end, where trying to ask how can society make such horrible people? Just minutes after we watch all of them make love, sometimes for real, depending on the cut. This end is kind of an apocalypse, but not as sleazy or into the world as you'd hope. Then again, a chance to see Lena not being directed by Jess Franco is rare, and her smile makes me happy. I often think, like, Jess had me watching her through his lens and just think, I need to have this woman in my life all the time, and I have to blow up my life. I have to, I'm married and all this stuff. I'm going to blow up my life for Lena Roman, and there's some odd romance in that. Up next, 21st century horror. Maybe not a thing, but we're going to have Christine Forrest, who is the Candy Lady in Dawn of the Dead. She's going to read Adam's one here. Here we go.
As they say, if you want to see an example of unconditional love, lock your wife and your dog in the trunk of your car, come back in 4 hours, and see which one is happy to see you. Indy, the canine star of Good Boy, is indeed a very good boy. His human counterpart, Todd, Shane Jensen, not so much. In fact, he might just be the worst. On one hand, Todd is sick with some sort of serious illness that causes him to require multiple hospital visits, blood transfusions, and cough up copious amounts of blood. Wanting to get off the grid and perhaps away from his overly concerned sister, Vera. How dare she be concerned for her brother, by the way? Todd and Indy take up residence in dead Grandpa's old abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. Grandpa is played here by Larry Fessenden, mainly seen in old VHS footage. Grandpa died mysteriously. They never found his dog Bandit, and now, night after night, Indy sees shadows moving in the corners of the room, blackened figures skulking about, and perhaps the cries of another dog in the basement. But anytime Indy makes any sort of noise, Todd is there to silence him. The sicker Todd gets, the meaner he becomes. He kicks Indy out of the bed at the slightest inconvenience, pushing him away when Indy tries to comfort him, eventually banishing him from the house entirely. Still, Indy remains loyal to the very end and beyond. Audiences might have a difficult time fully embracing Good Boy. There will undoubtedly be comparisons to another Shudder release that pointed the camera into corners, Skinamarink. Personally, I could not make it through that movie. I tried just about everything, thinking that watching it around 4 a.m. in a sleepy haze in a totally dark room would bring the atmosphere needed. It did not work. Good Boy has a bit more going on, at least. Director Ben Leonberg does a nice job of bringing the camera down to the ground, Ozu style, to try to provide that dog's eye view for the audience. And if you are a dog person, you should just be able to look into Indy's eyes all day long, or at least for the 72-minute runtime of this movie, and just melt. I know that I would rather watch Indy stare into the corner for an hour than watch that fake CGI dog in the latest iteration of Superman. It might also change your own perspective when your dog is barking at seemingly nothing. Maybe they are sensing something we cannot. Or maybe they are just annoyingly barking at a neighbor having the audacity to walk down their street. No matter the circumstance, we need to be nice to our pets. Definitely nicer than Todd, a low bar to clear. And this month we have the opportunity to give back to some of those pets in need while watching horror movies. While Indy may be a good boy, our boy dog Mr. Beauregard is the best boy. The vet calls him a distinguished gentleman. We rescued him from a shelter back in 2014. He is always super protective of our daughter. He barks at everything and nothing. He's just an old hound dog from DeRidder, Louisiana, but we wouldn't trade him for anything.
So I did my modern horror, and I thought, I'm going to do weapons, but I asked Helena Marcos if she would read my review for me.
Stupid American. I don't want to talk about weapons. I'm one of the 3 mothers that run the world, and I have a dance academy to run.
Sorry, Helena, I didn't mean to bother you.
Fuck you, San.
Anyways, let's get to Weapons. Weapons is another one of those movies that everybody tells me, you have to see this. So it's directed, written, produced, and co-scored by Zach Kreger. It's a modern horror movie. You know, it's fine. I always feel like, did people see a cut of the movie I did? And so I'm left with the feeling of like, oh, this is fine. Is this fans of how Hitchcock felt when Argento and De Palma started getting big? I really try, though, to look past my dislike of today and find something to enjoy. Unlike a lot of modern horror, at least Weapons has a beginning, middle, and end, even if I don't like all of it. So much before it just seems to falter to a conclusion. So if they had a really great idea for a movie and had no idea how to finish it, this takes place in Maybrook, PA, a town where every child except one, and Christine Gandy, Julia Gardner, who's great in this, third grade class has disappeared. Parents want to blame the kid, Alex, but they want to blame Justine, but there are no answers. School comes back, life has to go on, but it can't for Archer, one of the fathers, played by Josh Brolin, who decides to investigate the case himself. As for Justine, she starts drinking and hooks up with her ex, police officer Paul Morgan, Alden Ehrenreich. As the episodic film tells her story, Paul's Archer's and even that principal Marcus, played by Benedict Wong. The center role is Alex's Aunt Gladys, Amy Madigan, who eternally burn offerings her way into their house. Well, you want me to give away the whole story? There's decent camera work, a great chase at the end of the movie. And this kind of mixes the goal was the narrative flow of Magnolia, a movie I like, with the lost child bleakness of Prisoners, which is a million times better than this movie. The part I had the biggest problem with, there's a child, fake sounding child. I mean, even more than Bob, child narrator that they added, and you can tell it was studio note. Like, we're not really getting this. You know, where are we at in the story? Let's put this in. Who is Aunt Gladys? Is she a normal person using dark magic? Is she an alien or non-human creature? I don't know, but what I like the most is the hot dog meal that the couple eats. They literally like 10 hot dogs or 7 hot dogs. People are like amazed by this. They're like, no one could eat a 7 hot dog dinner. Have you seen me? I'm huge. Like I could eat a 7 hot dog meal. Would I get fries? No, just straight up hot dogs. And I'm not going to eat them like, this isn't like a hot dog eating competition. I'm not going to dip them in water or do the weird dance. Just like hot dogs. Roller dogs. Love roller dogs. More roller dogs. Hey, Adam's back. Slashers is the next day. And talked about Scalps from 1983. Are we sure that Fred Olen Ray's gritty, grimy, grainy film Scalps was made in 83? Are we sure that it was directed by Fred Olen Ray? Feels out of place both in his filmography and at the time which was released. By 1983, we're on the downward trajectory on the slasher trend, having peaked around 81. Nowhere else to go but down. Still in 1983, bros, plenty of interesting slashers. Sleepaway Camp, Psycho 2, Mausoleum. While the plot of Scalps is not interesting in and out of itself, there are some aspects worth digging into, so to speak. There's plenty of digging in Scalps. A group of college students go out to an area in the California desert, perform some archaeological research, of course, at the local convenience store. They're warned by a Native American and his best crazy Ralph impersonation. It's got a death curse. Do not disturb the ancient burial grounds found in the Black Forest or something like that. Adam says they should have taken better notes. But they listen. Of course not. There'd be no movie if they listened. Eventually, one of the guys gets possessed by a Native American spirit and chaos reigns. It's all pretty standard 80s slasher tropes. The look of the film feels closer to 73 than 83. Do not know better. I would have certain this film was a proto-slasher. It's definitely made in the cheap with a reported budget of $15,000. Brennan Wade described the film as 6 kids a station wagon, and at 10, he is not wrong. One aspect I found interesting is how fairly unlikable this group is as a whole. Typically find it appealing when I like the characters, like when the film takes time to develop the characters and relationships between and among the groups. And a slasher, then I feel bad when they get killed. I'm not one to root for a character's death just because they're annoying, downright hateful. Most of those narrow ladies trended towards a likable character. It's interesting to see the beginning of the trend in the other direction. Another slasher from 83, The Final Terror, feels very similar. These two films make a decent double feature pairing. Great job, Adam. Though it is not one I'd be clamoring to see. Both films feel like Friday the 13th cash-ins versus a straight-up ripoff. And both groups of campers and full individuals I would not care to be around for any part of time. I did like Scalps more than it might seem, though. I do generally like a boring slasher. This one's pretty dull. Something happens for about 45 minutes, maybe more. One character eats Raisin Bran right out of the box. That's kind of product placement I'm here for. There's some fun practical effects here, and I secretly love Native American culture appreciation. And horror films is not something I'm proud of, but that old burial ground trope hooks me in every time. Give me a cursed talisman. I even like Old Chief Woodenhead and Creepshow 2. I would say I would try to do better, but I just have no self-control. I'll just have to ask for forgiveness. I think we can forgive Adam here. I mean, we all like a Jess Franco movie, and we all like a Native American slasher. At least he didn't say Indian slasher. Anyway, Parker's back, and their pick for a slasher is Girls' Night Out. This thing is slow-mo. Is there a Confederate flag on the wall? Where does this movie take place? Ohio? Wasn't that a Union state? Note to Parker, I'm from Monongahela, PA. There are more rebel flags here than in the South. Girls' Night Out lives in the same vein of small-town slasher. Its brethren being My Buddy Valentine, The Prowler, the sleepaway camp. You could safely say elements of Halloween and Friday the 13th, spliced in for good measure. Basic plot simple, young people put in a precarious situation involving an unknown killer, taking them down one-on-one. What's Girls' Nights Out spin on this is putting him in a scavenger hunt, a small town, and having the killer be a dude in a mascot suit. Found my friends who were Five Nights at Freddy fans. Down, boy, down, sit, stay, heal. Someone who has lived in a small college town, hot partly attended this university, to have the student body participate in a scavenger hunt. Nothing happens for a very long time. I think that's normally how it is in Ohio. 100%. This, again, Sam, cutting in. I grew up near Ohio. Nothing happens. A lot of cow dipping, a lot of drinking in the woods. Unless Joe Burrow is playing football, it's not a terribly eventful film relying on the small town hijinks of several college kids. I know a lot of people get annoyed when a movie just relies on coziness, but no, I never minded. Jess Franco does the same thing in several of his films, only the cozy is broken up with sex instead of brutal murders. I have no issue either way. The bear mascot is creepy as fuck, constantly calling his female victims whores and killing people, being knives in his paws as a proto-Freddy Krueger. Feeling the requirement there be some gore, however minimal, he's really the most noticeable character, along with Hal Holbrook's policeman and the radio DJ. Everything else blurs together, being treated like meatbags, particularly the women. Listen, I feel bad not having much to talk about this. It's pretty straight to the point, with little outside the slasher gimmick. Everyone clearly is having a good time despite the cookie cutter plot and character archetypes. It's a good background movie, and if you want to be cruel, and a good comfort movie if you're tired, just want to watch an old school slasher. And in my local drive-in theater double bill this with Madman, where I imagine was very fun, old-timey screening perfect for the beginning of fall. Or how many people came to that after the mass exodus the society produced the following weekend. More on that later on. As for this film, this review, just like the man from several years ago said, it isn't much, but it's honest work. The next slasher is from John Connelly. John, thanks for writing for the site. John is a lifelong genre film fan living in New Jersey, and he's John Conn, C-O-N-N, at Letterboxd. He is doing Night of the Dribbler, which is directed by Jack Braven. His other credits include directing Adam West in 1987 Zombie Nightmare, working as a producer on Snuff, the film that can only be made in South America where life is cheap. Life isn't cheap in the Dribbler, but just about everything else is. Released in 1990 at the zenith of the slasher boom before Scream ushered in an age of self-aware teenage fright flicks. Dribbler is not much of a forgotten gem as it is well forgotten. It's the story of Stanley, a water boy with ambitions of joining the basketball team. Members of the team have a bad habit of turning up dead, and a killer in a basketball-headed mascot costume is to blame. Is Stanley the killer? Before the audience can find out, we'll be subjected to numerous sub-Zucker, Abrams-Zucker wordplay gags. I'll admit some jokes did land for me, such as the last time I saw faces like yours was on the court about 51 seconds ago. Sure, know if you're the kind of person who appreciate humor, exemplified by a basketball team having the unlikely moniker of the Watergate Plumbers. It is a rather bloodless affair, but not an unpleasant viewing experience. Gregory Kalbakis, the actor playing Stanley, would have a longer career at television, but he isn't really memorable here. His love interest, Becky, played by Flavia Carazia, is cute, vaguely goth, and unrelentingly supportive in a way that undoubtedly appealed to the sort of teenage boy that can pride this film's target audience. Ultimately, she doesn't have a lot more to do than spout out after-school special cliches. The true star of this film is TV's Fred Travelina, playing a dual role as both the coach and the basketball announcer. It is not entirely clear if Travelina's two characters or if the school district is underfunded. Either way, this movie seems designed as a bit delivery vehicle for Fred Travelina. You can either decide for yourself as a good thing or a terrible one. For years, this movie is a holy grail for me. While attending a slasher film festival at the Mahona Drive-In, I overheard another patron refer to Night of the Dribbler as an example of a genre no one had seen. Of course, that meant I had to seek it out. When I finally found it, I was confused who this movie is honestly made for. The humor, not funny enough to be considered spoof in the tradition of Alfred Soul's 1982 Pandemonium. Not a suspense in the kill to placate the slasher fans. There's hardly any sleaze to speak of to titillate the audience in other ways. And maybe the sort of film enjoyable as an oddity to inflict upon friends. There is a Code Red DVD floating around for slasher playlists. If they're merely curious, you can probably find it on YouTube. Up next is my slasher pick. Oh boy, Blood Orgy of the Leather Girls. Supposedly, director Meredith Lucas was unable to find distribution for this movie and unable to pay back her debts. She killed herself. Her brother Michael A. Lucas eventually distributed it in 1988, but there is no Meredith Lucas. There's just Michael. This is all BS to sell the movie. Joe Martin has been on the beat for 3 decades, but he's never seen anything like these girls. Sarah, Robin Jingold, a Jewish girl who loves Hitler. Rawhide, Melissa Lawrence, who wants to be John Wayne. Fleabrain, Joanne Lyman, is a flea brain. The religious Doretha, played by Simone Margolis, rounds out the crew. They cut classes at change rooms, school for girls. They drink to excess. They abuse men. And when someone kills Doretha, guess what? They get revenge, as only a blood orgy of the Leather Girls can have for us. It's also got a black velvet painting of Charles Bronson. Sarah gets it, the obsession with the Third Reich. At one point she says, I hate life, I hate school, I hate my parents. Most of all, I hate every day that passes. I get it. I say this every day. Except I'm like 40 years older than you. There are also ninjas in this. When the material and creative forces of women become corrupted by the brutality of the everyday world, a force of incredible violence is unleashed. Its bloodlust insatiable in this modern, enlightened, yet terrible age. Even religion seems powerless against the wrath of the female who is, it has been maintained, the deadliest of the species. I get why Lucas wanted to have a female name direct this. It would take away from the exploitation of the male gaze. But Ed Wood and Russ Meyer also made movies like this and weren't always afraid to put their names up front. Maybe more Russ than Ed Wood. The girls in this would probably abuse him just like every other man. Someone gets sodomized with the drill at the end of this movie. If that's something you want to see, good news. This one's got it. Seventh Day. Adam's back. Stelvio Soprati Day. And he said he was ashamed that whenever he saw this name, it didn't ring any bells. It's just his ignorance, because he knows the score for A Bay of Blood, a.k.a. Twitch of the Death Nerve, a.k.a. Carnage, a.k.a. Bloodbath, a.k.a. how many titles do you want to have? Is one of my favorite film scores of all time, across all genres. Has so many different flavors, from the menacing, the most jungle-like beats of the introduction to the whimsical finale. It's pretty much perfect. This movie is Ring of Darkness. It probably helps that his composition is executed by Goblin, leaning into the prog rock, almost droning feel. I cannot help but think about the score used in City of the Living Dead, and Carpenter's Prince of Darkness is comps of this style of score. I'm also ashamed, but I may have fallen asleep through Ring of Darkness. I blame a combination of sleep deprivation and the beats just dropping through the film that lulled me to slumber. Now, Ring of Darkness, not a very exciting film, but I was never bored by it. Beginning with an extended opening sequence, we learned a group of women is bound together by their love of dance and their love of the devil. Years pass, and eventually the daughter of one of the women is having a sort of spring awakening, suddenly becoming self-aware that her true father is Lucifer. Ring of Darkness may have been accused of being another Italian The Exorcist. Writer director Pierre Carpi claims that he wrote this story prior to William Blatty's novel. The film really owes more to Rosemary's Baby and The Omen. All 3 of these films form an unholy trinity that, let's just say, inspired many horror films in the 70s and 80s. No one would confuse Daria or Wendell with Reagan or Damien in terms of memorable, menacing demon characters. She, the spawn of Satan, but she just hit puberty. She goes around calling her mother, in an annoying way that only a teenager could do. She also does leave a scorching handprint on the chest of a classmate. Wants to make moves on her own ability. I'm sure more girls wish they had to rid themselves of annoying teen boys. Eventually, she ends up at the Vatican. Why? We will never know. No sequel was produced, or probably never asked for anyone ever. Still, I was interested in knowing what happened next. Just like I want to know the next chapter in The Omen. After Damien turns around and smiles back at the camera as he attends his parents' funeral. This is on Tubi. Satan's Wife, which is one of the worst titles in cinematic history. No Way for Satan here. I'm not sure Satan is down with long-term commitments. A much better title would have been To the Devil a Daughter, but Hammer had already used that one a few years prior. So, TSOL, Ring of Darkness. What did I pick? Oh boy. I went straight up sleaze. Should I be classy? No. SS Deported Women of the Special Section. La Deporte Dalia Session Speciale SS. Claims that its director is Alex Berger, so we all know there's no Alex Berger. It's Rina Di Silvestro, who IMDb said was an Italian writer-director who specialized in extremely raw graphic and, in the opinion of many critics, offensive low-budget exploitation fare. He also made Women in Cell Block 7, Love Angels, Baby Love, Bello de Mama, Hana D, Ragazza del Von del Park, also Bruno Mattei involved in that, The Erotic Dreams of Cleopatra, a movie I got to hunt down, and The Legend of the Wolf Woman, which I love. A group of female prisoners transported by train to an SS concentration camp. Look at the title. It's subjected to torture by Herr Einer John Steiner and his guards, who include Capo Helga Erna Scherer from La Bambola de Satana, lesbian third-rate boss, every movie, every SS sex movie. What a weird job. What is, like, I have a 4K of this movie, right? And not the only one that I have. And I am as left-leaning as it is. Why do I have these movies? Eric Foster prisoner Tanya Noble, who's Lena Polito. As if this was Sloan Kitty, it is. It starts with forced haircuts, including pubic haircuts, and ends with razor blade castration. We got Stefania D'Amario. She's Nurse Claire from Zombie. Anna Curti from Bob Was Kidnapped. Sarah Sperati, who's in the high-end version of this, like I mentioned before. Sloan Kitty. Sylvia Stubing, The Sheriff Wouldn't Shoot. Ophelia Meyer from Caligula's Hot Nights. Paolo Egidio from La Camisa. Maria Franco from The Beloved, A Man All Around the World. Felisa Fanny from X-Rated Girl. And Agnes Galapagos, who is in a bunch of these movies. SS Lager 5, SS Experiment Love Camp, Octung, The Desert Tigers, and Von Bettegole Strumptrufferfair. Gosh. All the interiors of the prison camp filmed at Bracanio Castle, the exact location where Toby, Dammit, The Inglorious Bastards, Night of the Devils, Megiddo, The American Code 2, oh yeah, and many films were also shot. This is the kind of dialogue that waits for you in this movie. Herr Einer says, do you love your Ivan? How he took your virginity away? In the forest like animals, or in that dirty bar where they killed him? How did he do it to you, huh? Standing up against a tree? Or lying on the ground amongst the fleas? What was so special about him? Tanya spits in his face. You were a slut. I will have you hang from a rope and I myself will tighten the noose around your neck. Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, Celia Soprati, who also did the music for Piranha 2, The Spawning, and Tentacles, which is how you rule the undersea world. Like I said, he did the music for this. I'm not proud that I watched or told you about this movie, but you know what? If we were proud of all the movies that we watch, we would not be covering movies like this, right? I mean, I am proud that I am open-minded. Anyway, Fiscal Media, we're on October 8th. I know, right? Micro-budget anthology films are all over. Micro-budget films streaming horror, but what if someone did it right? I would say that Ryan Petrillo and his co-writer Dan Wiskowski got it right. This movie made by people who care more than just to tell people they're filmmakers. The colors are intentional, the music and sound design absorb you. There are wild tones, ooze, and so much strangeness, as well as bottles of J&B and post-up sound. It speaks to my mind. Every autumnal equinox, a group of humanoids meets at the nexus of dreams and reality to celebrate the greatest mysteries of the universe, monsters, ghosts, the inexplicable, the outrageous. As they slurp their ceremonial assignment, join their minds, they share these stories of horror and fantasy. This is the Weird Vision Society, a post-up, micro-budget horror sci-fi anthology that is five tales woven together by the hallucinatory mind-bounding of ceremonial, slime-drinking humanoids from another dimension. Put it in my eyes like Carowin. These humanoids meet in a room with a gold curtain and what appears to be a picture frame that opens to the universe like the astrologer. In this sanctum, they pour ooze into bowls, lap it up before tripping out, and then eat in one of their own number. Each story may not have the best pacing, but anthologies never add up. Instead, the sum is way greater than the whole of the parts, and you'll be loving the drone, the neon, the moments that make this feel more like an Italian 80s directed video. Wallow and Scott is more than anything I bought on Blu-ray. That's the highest compliment I can give. Also, the ambient extras in this Blu-ray are my new meditation soundtrack. It's great. I love this movie. I want them to make 30 of them. I think it's pretty great. Up next, we got Blue Sunshine from 1977. Pretty exciting. Adam's back.
We want Dr. Pepper. We want Dr. Pepper. We want Dr. Pepper. Obnoxious, relentless children are enough to make you literally snatch your wig, grab the longest knife you can find, and chase them around the room. Whether you are feeling some very delayed side effects from some LSD you dropped 10 years ago or not. Blue Sunshine has been floating around on my watch list for a while now. I really had no idea what the plot of this film was, though. I only knew the film from the poster. The bald-headed lady standing in front of what appears to be a blue moon. Really, no clues are given as to what happens in the film. As it turns out, Blue Sunshine is closer to a political paranoia conspiracy thriller like 3 Days of the Condor than a traditional horror film. A small group of seemingly unrelated people are experiencing hair loss, followed by severe homicidal tendencies. Jerry Zipkin, Zalman King, we'll circle back to him, witnesses an attack by a friend inflicted with this seemingly acute psychosis, but becoming the accused murderer in the process. Out to solve the mystery and prove his own innocence, Jerry discovers that the cause may be linked to an LSD variant named Blue Sunshine that was distributed at Stanford a decade prior. I cannot say that I've ever seen a Zalman King performance before. I definitely know the name for the Red Shoe Diaries series on Showtime back in the 1990s. I cannot say that I watched much of that show, or at least you won't get me to admit it. But when I saw King's name appear during the opening credit sequence of Blue Sunshine, I immediately checked my phone to make sure this was the same person. King has a cinematic presence. He most definitely has cinematic hair. But I cannot think of anyone else like him. Well, I actually did read someone's review on Letterboxd that compared him to the recurring Red Shoe Diaries actor David Duchovny. That tracks. Again, Blue Sunshine is not your typical horror film, although there are some horrific things that happen. It feels political due to a main character who is running for Congress, but I did not make any connection to Edward Fleming's, Mark Goddard, ambitions, and his past of LSD hippie. I kind of expected more of a link to his past, but I don't think he knew what was going on. Honestly, that lack of awareness would suit him well for politics. There are a couple of aspects of the film that I could not help but comment upon. There is a low-speed car chase involving a Ford Bronco, and at the end of the film, Fleming is making a campaign speech promising to make America good again. He's going to need to up his game to greatness if he is going to truly succeed. Or maybe just put that blue sunshine in the water supply and see what happens. I watched this one on the Synapse 4K release. Synapse always does a spectacular job in their restorations and releases. They do not release films very often these days, but when they do, I almost always pick them up.
Those Manos. Manos, The Hands of Fate just read your thing out. He also, the next day, made for TV movie, and maybe for the college boys, The Truest Mirror is the toilet bowl staring back at them in the morning after toga party. This insightful line of dialogue is uttered by a faceless ventriloquist dummy during a set at a strip club, and a stranger calls back. A cut-paste sequel produced by Showtime in 1993. Starting with a revival of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in 1984, Showtime produced many original films during a run that lasted until 2007, never reaching the claim of HBO Films or the depths of Cinemax Friday After Dark programming. Showtime was able to carve out an interesting middle ground, particularly in the horror genre. The film that comes to my mind when I think about Showtime is John Carpenter's Body Bags. It was also the home for films such as Psycho 4, The Beginning, The Birds 2, Land's End, and Jim Wynorski's The Wasp Woman. When I look through this list of films now, I feel the need to share some of these potential hidden gems. And some of them, you know, you might have to seek out the Tiger Woods Story, a 1998 film directed by LeVar Burton, starring Keith David as Tiger Woods' dad. And A Stranger Calls Back, it's the gang from the first film together. There's Carol Kane as Jill, the babysitter tormented in the original movie, who has since turned her trauma into a career as a counselor while finding time to take self-defense classes on the side. Charles Durning as Detective John Clifford, using his skills to track down men who harass babysitters, a very niche skill set. And director Fred Walton, not much to say about Walton, other than he also directed April Fool's Day, following a string of made-for-TV films, including a remake of William Castle's I Saw What You Did. Not only the director and the main stars come back, but the basic template for the first film returns. The most often heard complaint about When a Stranger Calls is that the film loses steam after that iconic opening sequence. But what film could possibly match the energy and suspense of those first 20 minutes? Not much. People rarely talk about how great the last 15 minutes are as well. It's truly scary. The bookends of When a Stranger Calls Back do not mix the intensity of the original, it makes a decent effort. We get a legendary Scream Queen as the tormented babysitter, and Jill Shalin. The killer is creepier than in the first film, kind of like a Francis Dolarhyde meets Peeta from the Hunger Games. I think the second act here is more interesting than the one in the first film. Of course, having more Carol Kane is always a good idea in my book. Watching Carol Kane stunt double do a jumping scissors kick against her attacker is peak cinema. My TV movie is Face of Evil. That comes from 1996. Tracy Gold, always a good girl until this movie. She's Darcy Palmer, an artist who loses her mind, leaves her man at the altar, takes all his money, heads to New York City, and kills a college student named Brianne Dwyer. Then she starts life all over again as a college student in New Hampshire. She soon becomes friends with Janelle, played by Shawnee Smith, and goes home to meet her father, Russell Perry King. Before you know it, she has him fooled, and she's cutting his ponytail off in the shower and showing widow dad how to live again. Directed by Mary Lambert, Brett McGregor Goodell, lots of TV movies, but also the director and writer of Video Nasty Human Experiments. This has the lovely young daughter of TV's growing pains, stuffing dead bodies into a suitcase, ruining eyes with acid eye drops, full Chia alert, and even trying to stab our good girl with scissors. She's killed 10 people in 6 cities. Keeps changing who she is, but she's somehow always staying ahead of the cops. If this were Jolly, these cops would be the dumbest of all movie police. Defund the Jolly police. It has a festering suitcase filled with a dead body, can stay in a dorm for days and then at a construction site for months. No one notices. Perry King also wears a jaunty scarf for a scene where Gold bites him and screams, "I'm an artist." Also, total square up rail of all her crimes. While Perry King's like, I guess we're lucky, and yet he still slept with her. I'm sure it was amazing. Sure, it was totally worth all the people that died. Anyway, that's what we got there. Up next, we're going to break this into 3, and this is probably the most important. The Sweetest Taboo is the category, and Adam is going to talk about Cute Devil, but I have seized another guest.
Adam, this is John Carradine, coming to you from the great beyond. Somewhere in the void, and Sam has used a cursed object to draw me close to read your words. I hope you like it. Hold on to your penmanship medals. Nobuhiko Obayashi, Haosu, brings us a version of The Bad Seed, with a child perhaps even more devious than Rhoda Penmark. I would say that The Bad Seed was a gateway horror film for me, but I was born in the 1970s. The idea of gateway horror had not been invented, or even considered. One of my earliest memories is watching Carrie on our little television in the trailer we were living in. The pig's blood dropped and I ran out of the room. Carrie was aired on CBS in 1978. Sure, they made a few edits, but a 3-year-old me would not have been able to notice. The real question is, why would my parents let me watch it in the first place? Sort of the blessing and the curse of being Generation X. I wouldn't trade it for anything. My mom loved Alfred Hitchcock, and she would often tape his films or television show any chance she got, and we would watch it on the weekends, along with a week's worth of all my children. But the film I most fondly remember is The Bad Seed, taped off of WGN, complete with commercials for K-Tel Records and Empire Carpet. 588-2300, Empire. We would watch it all of the time. Oh, how I wish I still had that old VHS tape. The Bad Seed had so many aspects that fascinated me. I was too young to understand the concept of translating a stage play to film. We do not see the evil Rhoda commits. We just hear about it. It might have made the idea of such an evil child more effective. Also, I'm still not sure what Excelsior is exactly, but apparently it is highly flammable. As much as I love The Bad Seed, it is possible that Obayashi's version is superior in many ways. He totally cuts out the psychological mumbo-jumbo that drags down a significant portion of the original film. Our child killer here, Alice, is just a sociopath from the beginning. Is it possible that the suicide of her father is the root cause? Who cares? It doesn't matter. We are just here to watch Alice bludgeon her teacher to death in order to get a prized doll. Obayashi also deviates from the original story by bringing in an aunt as the main protagonist. Ryoko ends up in a mental institution after believing she has caused her boyfriend's death. I mean, she did wish death upon him as he was walking out the door, only to be struck down by a car. On that same day, Ryoko's sister, Fuyoko, is getting married. Why Ryoko isn't there is not explained, other than she is studying music in Vienna. After Alice asks Fuyoko if she can have her veil when she dies, Fuyoko says yes, not expecting to be violently tossed out of a window minutes later. Years pass, and eventually Ryoko is convinced she was not responsible for the death of her boyfriend. Her brother-in-law, I guess he was only legally married to her sister for mere minutes. Talk about early release. Asks Ryoko if she would come and be governess to Alice. Sweet Alice. She does, but quickly begins to believe that Alice is responsible for the mysterious deaths happening around the family. We do not approach the insanity that is Havasu, of course, but Obayashi does have plenty of tricks up his sleeve. He foreshadows this glass vase so hard that you know something is going to happen with it. But I could have never expected what actually does happen. I thought, there it is, immediately thinking that it is something that would have easily happened to one of the girls in Havasu. The Leroy character, the guy who knows the truth, but would have difficulty proving it, is even scummier than the guy in the bad seed. And Alice does not need to rely on him sleeping on a bed of excelsior to ignite those flames. All around, a great companion piece to both Havasu and the bad seed. I could watch both of those films back to back right now. Similar to other remakes of the bad seed in the United States, Cute Devil was made for television. I seem to be stacking up MFTV movies this month. A seemingly endless fount of goodness that unfortunately does not seem to exist anymore.
Finally, my sweetest taboo is Basket Case 3, The Progeny. Bilal suffers through his brother's cirrhosis, his girlfriend's death, and the death of one of his children while the sheriff's daughter drops it. Poor Bilal, 3 movies in, he's still trying to adequately express his emotions. The last time his brother Dwayne was trying to sew him back on. Now Dwayne's being held by Granny Ruth. But Bilal'd go on the bus trip to see her ex, Dr. Hal Rockwell, so that Bilal's children with his girlfriend Eve can be born. Yes, they'll also see Granny Ruth's son, Little Hal, a multi-armed blob who can practice healthcare. Anyways, there's a bigoted sheriff, Wynn isn't there, and his bad girl daughter Opal to deal with. The cops busting at one point, guns blazing, realistic. Murder Eve, then they take Bilal's children as if they're a practice run for ICE, late child stealing, government operations to fight back. Bilal has an exoskeleton built that allows him to kill even more people and causes the sheriff to kill his own daughter. Then they arrive at Ronaldo, a talk show host, where they kill the host, and Granny says the freaks will no longer hide in the shadows. Frank Henenlotter film, you know what that means. You're either going to love it or you hate it. I loved it. Perhaps even more than the last one, because it just gives in and lets go. As for the song Personality being in this, the owner reportedly gave them the rights for just $1 when he found out that Annie Ross would be the one singing it. I want this IMDb to be true. Is it? Who can rightly say? Anyways, that's the first 10 days of 31 days of Horror Goes Back. Come back in hopefully in a few days, I'll do another one of these. Thanks to everybody that wrote, and thanks for listening. This is a longer episode than I usually do. Stay tuned.